Hi, I'm Lisa Singer. I am the Senior Director Event Programming at MediaPost, and this is Brand Insider BTS, where I get to pull back the curtain on some of the most influential women brand marketers today. And with me is Margarita Miranda-Abate, and she is the Head of Global Communications Oncology at Sanofi. Hey, how are you, Margarita?
Hi, Lisa. Super happy to be here.
Well, I'm so happy to have you here and or here, not actually here, but and based on I'm going to call you Marg. Is that's
That's
okay?
perfectly fine. All my friends call me Marg, and I feel like we're friends already.
Yes, I do too. And I noticed on our email exchanges that you were signing Marg, so I figured that would go well, and it's easier. Not that Margarita is difficult, but I always like the one syllable words. So anyway, I want to first ask you about I say this every time I do my snooping, and I like to see what people are writing
Yeah,
about, what
absolutely.
you're doing, and all of that. And I know that you wrote on LinkedIn that you're always searching and learning to be the best of who I can be. I believe in taking risks that will help me grow and invite me to ask questions so I'm as agile as possible. So my question is to you is what has been the most defining moment in your life where you took that risk and it really did help you to grow?
Um, I think it's funny. I look at business and personal a little bit. One blends into the other. And I feel like if I take interesting risks in life, it does lead over into business. I think probably my most risky moment in my life in general, looking at it personally and in business, um, was probably, and I know this sounds weird, but leaving home. I come, from Latina, grew up a very good Latina girl, a good Catholic girl. And it's funny when I look at like some of my friends, for example, their college careers. I didn't go away to college. I stayed home.
Mhm.
The expectation was to stay home, help. Certainly, I went to college, but I also had a lot of responsibilities at home. I helped raise my little sister, who's an amazing woman today. Help my mom, who was a single mom of three kids. And it was that balance. I very much lived that life. And finally, when I said to myself, okay, I was going to grad school, I said, I've got to take a new direction. And that I was so
Mhm.
scared. But I went ahead, and my mother, I remember, she looked at me and she said, "Are you sure you want to do this? You don't have to do this. I don't know why you're moving so far away from me." I was moving to Brooklyn from Washington Heights to Brooklyn, but to her, it was two worlds away. It was a huge world away.
Mm.
And finding my independence, figuring out who I was on my own, that probably was the most defining moment in my life. And then from there, I realized, I often say this, I would sometimes find myself in rooms without doors, and I would kind of look at a wall and say, where do I want the door? And then make my own door.
Right. No, that makes sense. And I'm curious because, as you said, I mean, and I'm expecting you to move cross country or from another country, and
Yeah,
but it's not. But it's the binds or whatever of that family connection, and really,
correct.
a block away can seem just as big as
Yeah,
going cross country. But I'm curious because you maintained that relationship with the family, and
yes,
you found your own being and what who you
yes.
how did they interact? Like, was there ever a sort of a you had to kind of fight with one to get to the other, like before they melded in the way that you needed them to? Was there that kind of going back and forth with each other?
Absolutely. I mean, there was a period in my life that um, I lived in two worlds. I was never comfortable in my own skin. I started my career off ironically, in the corporate world in advertising. Started off being first one of two women working in General Motors, one of two women in the entire country on the account team. And I'm talking like a team of like maybe 25 men. Amazing, fantastic. I learned a lot from them. And then from there, moving over into communications. And there, 9 times out of 10, I was the only Latina. There was diversity, with certainly, amazing African American women, amazing, Asian American women, but very few Latinas. And it was a struggle showing up as my genuine, authentic self. Learning to understand when I was too much and was I too much. Now I've grown comfortable into who I am, I realize that there's no such thing as too much. You are who you are, right? It's just managing and learning to style flex based on the audience that you're in. But oftentimes just my culture never really showed up at work. I was someone else at work. I was someone else professionally. And then when I left, that's when I was my authentic self. And eventually, like I said, I learned to embrace who I was authentically myself in my professional career. And it made things so much better. I was better.
I'm sure, because how can you be if you're always putting up this facade? How can you really do what you do best? In
Exactly.
that sense. And I'm curious because I also saw that you, again on LinkedIn, that you wrote you like to champion to others to help them find their voice. So it
Yes,
sounds like you needed to find your voice.
correct.
Right. How were you able to do that? And was there someone else? Was there a champion for you helping you there?
I'd have to say many champions and many mentors who helped me in a lot of different ways. I leveraged mentors. For me personally, I never had only one. I had different people. And I had many mentors. And as I was saying, before as I was saying earlier, I leveraged them in different ways for different reasons, for different situations. And I had one amazing mentor um, who helped me figure out a lot of things. Because it was a turning point in me professionally and I think personally. He gave me the best feedback I'd ever gotten ever. To this day, it stays with me. To this day, when I'm struggling, I kind of go back to that. He had said to me, he was doing my review, and he said to me, "You expect too much of your team." And I looked at him. I remember thinking to myself, what does that mean? Right? I'm sitting, because my internal monologue is, I'm working to the bone. I work 5 times harder than everybody else to prove myself. I didn't go to these, prestigious schools. I made my own way. I found my way here. What do you mean? Because
Hmm.
I've always been working hard. I've
Yeah.
always had high expectations for myself. I've always had to work 5 times harder than everyone else. And I didn't get it. And for a long time, I was exceedingly resentful of that particular feedback. He and I spoke about this a few years ago, and I thanked him for that because at the time I didn't understand. Um, but I realized what he meant. It meant that I wasn't enjoying the moments, that I wasn't taking that breath to take that step back to examine what I was learning, how my team was growing, taking them into account, and just realizing that sometimes it's okay to just live in the moment that you're in. And ever since then, whenever I'm berating myself over something that didn't go great, or if I'm having a doubt, I sit back and say to myself, I'm expecting too much of myself. I'm expecting too much of my team. And it's not that they're not talented or not capable, but it's realizing that we're all humans. And it kind of goes back to, I know, I had reviewed the questions about perfection isn't attainable. That's where that comes from. Perfection isn't attainable. Perfection is in how you show up. And I say this to my son all the time. He was an elite level gymnast for 15 years. And his dad and I would always say that if you think you did your best, if you can look at yourself in the mirror and know that you showed up for your team, for you, it doesn't matter if you win. That's perfect.
Right.
That's perfect. It's not about the ultimate product because that's unattainable. You can never please everybody. You can never please yourself fully enough. But are you enjoying the journey?
Yeah. No, and I'm curious though, I guess two parts. You didn't ask the person giving you the review, what do you mean by that? Or did you sort of take it at face value?
I did ask him, I was like, what does that mean? And he said to me, he said, you're just, he's like, some of the feedback that your team thinks you're great, but they just feel that you're really hard on them. And I'm like, am I not nice? Because I equated that immediately with, oh my
Mm.
God, am I not nice? The people
Right.
pleaser in me. And he said, it's not about being nice. I said, okay, well, did the team, has the client complained? Have editors complained? Has anyone else complained? They said, no, everything is, you're doing a great job. He's like, but he was the one that I learned that everyone has this checklist, two checklists, the job description, which is what you're looking for, right? And then this almost amorphous qualitative side. And it was that qualitative side that it's not definable. That's the gut piece,
Yeah.
right? And he said, I said, I'm going to need you to give me examples because I don't know what that means. Um, but I ended up understanding and learning it. And he even said to me, he's like, you're not going to get it right now. It's not
Right.
something you can fix overnight. He's like, and I know you want to fix it overnight. He's like, this is something that's going to take you a while, but you need, and that's where the journey of self-awareness started for me.
Yeah.
And it was
No,
painful. It was painful.
no, it is. I mean, I think as much as we want to hear critiques about ourselves, it's not always easy to hear.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get defensive, I know for myself. And but then you kind of take a step back and you realize, okay, this is what is meant by it, and this is I do get it. And it almost sounds like by expecting so much from your team, you obviously are expecting so much from yourself, and you're not
Correct.
enjoying the wins. You're not enjoying the getting there. You're just moving, that keep moving forward kind of thing. So I get that feeling. I mean, I think there's a fine line from getting what you hope to, what you need to get, and then also getting what, a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I do understand what you're saying, where you're coming at. But yeah, no, at first I was like, why wouldn't you want your team to do the best? But there's a fine line between doing the best and doing a good job, and then just always, never being enough. I think if someone always feels like they're never enough, then they're not going to feel good about any of it.
And that's exactly, Lisa, that you hit the nail on the head. I know that I had always had almost an imposter syndrome a little bit. Um uh
So you
and
weren't
am I
enough,
enough?
right?
Absolutely. I mean, look, my background is I was born in the US, but I moved to Mexico when I was 4, lived in Mexico till I was 4 years old, and spent my life between the US and Mexico. I grew up in Washington Heights. I always
Mhm.
knew what I didn't want to be. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to be, but I knew what I didn't want to be. And I didn't want to be a statistic. I didn't want to be where some of the people around me, I saw where they were going. Um, I had the nickname of like the bookworm. And, I would go to parties and I'd sit in a corner and read a book.
Mm.
I'd make sure that my friends got home safe. Um, I, I just knew what I didn't want to be. I knew that I had to keep moving forward in order to achieve what success to me at the time looked like or thought it looked like.
Yeah.
Um, and that was really important to me. It was important to me because I knew how hard my mother worked and I wanted to make her proud. And I wanted her to know that what she strived for was not in vain.
Right. Well, and I'm curious in the sense that, so you, as you said, you didn't necessarily know the vision of where you are now, but you knew what you didn't want. Do you see that for others in the sense of how much, like you even said, you like to help champion someone find their voice? Um, you see other, I think we're seeing changes, we're seeing more diversity in the workplace, but I think there still needs to be work. I think we all believe that. And if you see someone maybe who might have been young you, then, young Mark, then how do you help them not only find their voice, but maybe put past some of those imposter, if they have that, or like, is it, and it is something you want to try to help? Do you sort of see yourself and want to try to help that to be more inclusive and to give people that step up that maybe you didn't have?
I always do that. I sit on a lot of panels, uh, discussing, especially with young Latinos or Latinas, about where they are and their background. Um, I do my best to look at the individual as to who they are, as opposed to a young me, because
Yeah.
every one of these younger talent, they have their own experiences and their own stories to tell. So I try and hear and listen to what's their story, what's their challenge, what's their struggle. Um, and what I have always said is, in finding your voice, one is you have to embrace where you came from. I remember I sat on a panel once and this one young man came up to me and he said, where'd you grow up in the Heights? And I said, oh, I grew up 207th. He's like, I grew up on 183rd. How did you get to where you are? And I said, let's sit and talk.
Hmm.
And we had a discussion, and he was like me. He was trying to fit into two worlds. And I said, stop trying to do that. I said, embrace who you are. I said, remember that diversity isn't just our backgrounds, our genders. Diversity is also how you think. Nobody can replace how I think.
Hmm.
Nobody can replace how he thinks. Why? Because our experiences in our life have helped shape how we think. It helps shape how we show up. It helps shape how we act in certain situations. Um, and all of that is value. And I said, when you start to embrace that side instead of pretending that that doesn't exist, which is what I did, I said, your world is going to change because it's going to be completely different. And it was like an aha moment for him. But that was my personal, experience.
Hmm.
Um, and I think, everyone's voice is unique and different. Um, and again, you have to be flexible. The one thing that I also always say to young talent is, don't think of your career in a linear way. I said it should look like the Great Wall of China. And I've been to the Great Wall of China. I've seen it. Parts of it are excavated, parts of it are not excavated. It looks like a snake curling up and down, curves. Sometimes you can't even see it.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's hidden by the clouds, up at the very top. And then you see it kind of picks up again. That's what your career should look like. Completely say yes to different opportunities, because those opportunities may take you down a path that you didn't even know existed. If you only think of, I need to climb the ladder, well, that's not fun. That's boring. But if you think to yourself, I'm going to go down that path. That path looks a little bit, I don't know. I can't exactly see beyond the trees, but I'm going to trust my gut that I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's completely clear, and that's okay. But that is how you have different experiences. My career started off in consumer beauty, morphed into working in lifestyle, and then working with the Mexican government, which was one of the best experiences of my life, to pharma.
Yeah.
And it's because I said yes. I'm scared, and I realized that if something scares me, I should do it.
Well, I mean, just even when you talk about path, I mean, I know obviously within your career, you've changed to different industries. Um, but also just starting out, you were a theater major, or didn't you
Yeah,
get your master's in
I
theater?
did.
So you certainly zigzagged a lot. So when you're doing that, one, I guess, was where you are ever on the radar? Was that ever sort of part of the plan? But if not, what were those learnings that you kind of took? You're first wanting to be, I'm assuming, an actress or a director or, whatever, but how did it kind of get evolved to where you are?
I actually was an archaeology and theater major. I was a cartographer
Okay.
and I loved reading maps. I actually found the outline of a pyramid as part of my senior thesis work. It was amazing. And I had an opportunity to either get a master's in theater or archaeology. But again, the good girl in me, I wanted to move to Arizona, and my mother balked at that.
Mhm.
So I moved to Brooklyn instead, and I ended up studying theater. And I did off Broadway,
Not
off
a lot of
Broadway.
archaeology digs in Brooklyn.
Not a lot of archaeology digs in Brooklyn. Mesoamerican archaeology, ironically. And I did off Broadway. I did off Broadway. I toured. I realized I did do acting. I did want to be a director. And I realized that I really like stage managing and this idea of a process work. I worked with Joseph Papp Theater for about a year, and I actually um, was the stage manager for their Hispanic festival. And it was a great amalgamation, a great merger of like my culture and theater, and I loved it. But it got to the point that, theater is very much a business. Entertainment is a business.
Yep.
And I started to not really enjoy it. And I thought, let me figure something else out that I enjoy um, before I start to hate this. And I thought, well, what do I love to do? I like writing. I like, I could tell a great story from acting. Um, I like talking to people. So I went into advertising, and I worked for an iconic legend in advertising. And then from there jumped into public relations, communications, and I've never looked back. I was one of those people that had no fear picking up the phone and talking to reporters about anything. Um, I was always honest about the clients that I was representing. I was very fortunate that I always worked for clients whose products I believed in.
Mhm.
And that eventually just helped me sort of really leapfrog to work with a variety of clients, Procter and Gamble, Unilever. The Dove campaign was a, 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 definitely one of the highlights of my career. Um, and fortunate enough to work with individuals who along the way pushed me constantly to do great. Howard Pulchin is one of those people. He was a creative director at Edelman and someone that I spent a lot of time with working on Dove and what that story would look like. But the best thing was Howard pushed me to think differently. Howard pushed me to look at things in a different way, to ask questions. And Edelman was that pivot point where my journey of self-awareness started.
Mhm.
Um, and an honesty of just myself, right? And realizing that again, how I show up externally in the real world is
Yep.
how I should be showing up at work and vice versa.
Right. I wonder if, and then I want to move on, but because I talked to other women and who have similar experiences, whether it be just because they're women, whether it be because they're women and they're of a different group, they're different cultures, whatever it may be, they're not necessarily dressing the way corporate America dresses, or they're not doing things with their hair the way. And so they try to become that, what is expected. And it's not until they fully embrace who they are that they're able to really shine. They shine, but then they really, because, and I think that that really makes sense. If you're not being yourself, then what makes you so valuable? What makes you the best is who you really are. But it takes time sometimes. I mean, it took you some time to get there. Do you believe that starting out in a just starting out, you could do that? Does corporate America expect you to be them? And then you gradually get to that point? Or would you advise someone who is, and I know you have, that you say embrace your past and embrace who you are when you're talking about speaking to that young man who came and asked you, but do you feel like there has to be a, you know, a little bit hiding it? Or I'm just curious, like, what do you think is really capable there? It's really possible.
I think when I started, absolutely, it was a completely different world. I think when I started, I had many great managers, great leaders, and then I had bosses, and I didn't want to be any of those bosses. Um, uh, I had one person who made me rewrite a simple press release 8 times, 8 times. And while that individual doesn't know, the 8th time, I was so angry that I went back to the first version
Mm.
and pulled that. And that's what I submitted. And that's what they approved before it went to the client. Ego, the level of ego, I think when I started of individuals was unhealthy. I think over time, I think the business world has evolved where it's how people started to realize that, we say today that people don't leave companies, they leave leaders, they leave managers, they leave people. That's always been true. No one has ever said it. I think someone starting out today, I think the young talent today, they're looking for people that they can learn from,
Mhm.
that they can work with, not for, with. It's very, very important. No one works for me. They work with me. That
Right.
includes my agency. They work with me. We all work for a reason, for a common purpose. I work for Sanofi.
Mhm.
And I'm with Sanofi because I believe in the vision of the leadership. I think today that's what kids are looking for. And I love that about today's generation. I know that there's a lot of people that complain about the generation. I think you just need to take a step back and look that they think differently. The world today is not what it was 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago, let alone 15 years ago, let alone 20 years ago. And what it looks like today is not what it's going to look like 5, 10, 15, 20 years in the future. These kids are living in different worlds of technology where it is today and where it's going to be. AI is going to change everything, every industry. And I think they're just looking to figure out, I think a lot of them know who they are. They just need to figure out who I fit, will I fit, who I am, does it fit here?
Right.
And because if I fit here, then I'm gonna have a great time and I'm gonna give everything of myself because they do.
Yep.
So I mean, I just think it's different.
Finding those places. And I do think, I mean, not to say it's fully, doesn't need to be any changes, but I do think it's more open-minded. And I think
Yeah.
people are looking for that diversity in the sense of not just diversity of thinking to bring to the table, especially in marketing when it comes to that. So I think it's more people embrace it, because we want all these different voices because there are all these different voices that we're trying to reach.
Yeah,
So I,
and listen, I think a lot of young talent, when you think about marketing, they want to, yes, the company is also important, and the people, but the brand is important. They want to feel that this brand, um, and it's not just about sustainability or carbon footprint. It's what does the brand stand for,
mhm,
right? Is this a, it's not about it being a cool brand. is this brand a brand that treats its people well, that when it shows up externally to individuals, it's maybe it's a clothing brand. Is it size inclusive? If it's um, a cooking brand, is it affordable for everyone? Do they have a range so everyone can, is able to actually take that? Or is it so expensive that it's only for the most elite? I think they
Right.
look for that. I think
Yep.
that's really important.
Yep. No, I agree. Well, I mean, we could keep talking on this for so long, but I want to actually just have a little fun and ask, what's your guilty pleasure?
Oh my gosh. So I like horror movies.
Horror movies?
I
Yeah.
like horror movies. I will
Like
sit at
gory,
home.
suspenseful, like what's the
It really depends. I don't like gratuitous violence. I like really smart, good horror movies. So the Saw series, I won't watch anything past Saw 1 or 2 because after that it became gratuitous. I really like foreign horror movies. There's some really good Irish ones, some good Korean ones. Um, uh, I like the first Halloween, the second Halloween. There's a really brilliant horror film that's getting a lot of play at Cannes with Demi Moore. So it's called The Substance. So I can't wait to see that.
okay. Oh,
Um,
I've heard about that. Okay.
yep. So I kind of look to see what is getting awards, and I go there and I look at that. But horror movies are a little bit of a guilty pleasure.
That's awesome.
Final girl energy, Lisa. Final girl energy.
Well, I think, but don't do you yell at the screen? Like, I'm
I
sorry,
do.
the person running and falling or going, like the things that are like, I would never, like, why are you going upstairs? You hear a noise upstairs. Why are you going upstairs? Why aren't you leaving? Why are you running and you fall? Oh, of course you trip. Like things like that.
I yell at the screen. I remember I was watching, I think the second to last Halloween, only because I wanted to complete the series. And Michael Myers is slowly walking, not even strolling, slowly walking.
Yeah.
And people are booking and they're sweating. And I think to myself, how are you going to be killed? You're running, just
Uh-huh.
run
Yeah.
and get in a car. I mean, yeah, I scream at
No,
the screen.
but I actually like horror movies without the gore. Like I don't like I watch like this the whole time. So but when they're suspenseful, like I have literally jumped out of my seat in the theater, like just I scream. So in that sense, it's fun. But when it's gory and just, I don't know, I just my
I mean, some of my favorites, I have to say, my favorite scary movie of all time is the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1976. Not a single drop of blood, everything happens off screen. The
yeah.
original Suspiria, from 1973, maybe. Anything early D'Argento, which is all artistic and highly stylized,
I
early
want to ask you,
60s.
you need to look for, I don't even know. I watched it randomly on TV or something. It's called Visiting Hours. It's old. It's
Oh, I
about
have to look for that.
placed in a hospital, and it was one of those where you never had some usually you have something scary happening, then you have a little bit of time to relax, and then the next scary. This thing was scary, scary. Like you were constantly on the edge of your seat.
Oh my
I was like,
gosh, I have to look that up.
yeah, I
I
don't
will
know.
be watching that and I'll email you and let you know.
Yeah, it's with an older actor, Lee Remick
Lovely Remick.
in it, I believe.
She's
I
wonderful,
might die.
blonde,
I don't
beautiful,
know. But
and fantastic.
but no, there's one scene. So when you watch it, you have to like that. Let me know. There's one scene where literally I was like, just lost it. Like it was like amazing. I didn't expect it. I was expecting something else, and it completely just. So yeah, look for that. I have no idea if it's on anything or whatever, but
I'm sure
I
it's on
watched it
stream. I'll
randomly.
figure it out.
So
I'm
and
gonna
we
look for it. Visiting hours. Got it.
yeah. Okay, so I want to ask you finally, what is what's your everyone has big goals. What is your like daily goal? Like what do you want to achieve this today and that makes you feel good?
So I think it's two things. One, get through my checklist sometimes. because I'm very much a checklist person.
Mhm.
Um, I think for me, it's on a daily basis is making a connection with someone. So whether that's a colleague that uh at work, a friend that I haven't connected with in a long time, and I just reach out to see how they're doing. My daily goal is to make a connection with someone.
Very good. Well, I love that. Well, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Marg. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. This was great.
Yeah. And thank you for watching. And if you have anyone that you would want me to pull back the curtain on, like I did with Marg, please let me know and I will do my best. So thanks for watching and thanks again.